This story is titled, My Wife Wanted Half of Everything in the Divorce. Turns out none of it was mine. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey Reddit, if you'd asked me a year ago, I'd have said my life was as close to perfect as it could get. At 29, I wasn't just coasting through, I was thriving. Born and raised in Miami, I was the only child of a family that had built a real estate empire from scratch. My parents weren't your typical rich folks who threw money around for fun. They worked hard for everything they had, and they made sure I respected that. Growing up, I never had to struggle, but I wasn't handed everything on a silver platter either. My dad made me intern at the bottom of the company when I was still in high school. You'll earn your seat at the table, he'd say, and he meant it. At the time, I thought it was unfair, watching my friends party while I was filing contracts and shadowing meetings. But now, I get it. My dad didn't just want me to inherit the business, he wanted me to deserve it. By my late 20s, I had moved from shadowing to actually making decisions. I wasn't the CEO yet, but I was running some big projects, and my dad trusted me with more responsibility every day. My mom was just as invested in my future. She handled the company's PR and branding, and she was the first one to suggest I start networking outside of work. That's how I ended up at the art gala, where I met Rachel. Rachel. Even saying her name used to feel like a flex. She was stunning, like model-level stunning. Tall, brunette, with this natural elegance that made everyone around her stop and stare. The first time I saw her, she was standing under one of those fancy chandeliers, holding a glass of wine, laughing at something some guy was saying. She looked like she belonged in a movie scene. I was hooked instantly, and apparently, so was she. We started talking, and it felt like we'd known each other forever. She told me she worked in PR, representing fashion brands and influencers, which made sense. She had this way of carrying herself, always put together, always knowing exactly what to say. I remember thinking, this girl's got her life together. We started dating not long after that, and for a while, it felt like I was living in some rom-com. Rachel was everything I thought I wanted. She was smart, funny, ambitious, and she fit right into the lifestyle my family had built. My mom adored her. And my dad? Well, he was a little harder to impress, but even he admitted she was a sharp girl. A year and a half later, I decided to propose. I went all out. Private yacht, roses everywhere, live music. It was over the top, but that's just how I do things. Rachel loved it. She cried, said yes, and immediately started planning the wedding of her dreams. The wedding itself was a spectacle. 500 guests, a venue overlooking the ocean, designer everything. Rachel was in her element. She loved the attention, the cameras, the way everyone fawned over her. I just went along with it, happy to see her happy. At the time, I didn't think twice about the way she soaked up every ounce of praise. It was part of who she was. She loved being seen, and I loved seeing her shine. After the wedding, my parents gifted us a 2-week honeymoon in Bora Bora. If you've never been, let me just say, it's like stepping into a postcard. Overwater bungalows, clear blue water, palm trees swaying in the breeze. Our villa had an infinity pool, glass floors where you could see fish swimming beneath, and a private deck where we could just sit and take it all in. It was paradise, plain and simple. The first few days were everything I hoped they'd be. We snorkeled, explored the island, and ate like royalty. Rachel was glued to her phone most of the time, snapping photos and posting them online. She was all about the aesthetic, the hashtags, the perfect couple vibe. I didn't mind. It was her thing, and honestly, I liked showing her off. She looked incredible in every picture, and it felt good to know the world saw what I had. One night, we had this insane dinner on the beach. They set up a table right by the water with candles everywhere and a private chef cooking for us. Rachel wore this stunning dress that flowed in the wind, and for a moment, I just sat there thinking, this is it. This is everything I've ever wanted. She looked up from her phone, she'd been posting obviously, and smiled at me. You know, she said, we're basically everyone's couple goals right now. I laughed, but there was something in the back of my mind that felt off. It was small, barely a blip, but it was there. Like, she was more excited about what people thought about her than the actual person itself. I brushed it aside, telling myself I was overthinking. After all, wasn't this exactly what I wanted? A wife who turned heads, a life that looked like it belonged in a magazine, a future that was as bright as the Bora Bora sun. Everything about the honeymoon seemed perfect. I mean, how could it not? We were in freaking Bora Bora. It was the kind of place where they knew your name the second you walked in and would bring you anything you wanted without you even asking. But as the week went on, little things started to pop up that didn't sit right with me. Nothing major, just enough to make me pause for a second, you know? Like Rachel was spending way more time on her phone than I expected. I know that sounds dumb to even notice, but it was weird. We'd be sitting on the deck, looking out at the water, and instead of talking or soaking it all in, she'd be glued to her screen. She'd be texting, scrolling, or editing photos for Instagram. At first, I thought maybe she was just excited to share the trip with her friends. She'd post these long captions like, "Feeling so blessed to be spending forever with the love of my life," or "Pinch me, I must be dreaming. Why your honeymoon goals?" People ate it up, of course. Every post got a ton of likes and comments, and Rachel loved it. But after a while, it started to feel like the honeymoon wasn't even about us. It was about how good it looked to everyone else. One afternoon, I tried to bring it up casually. We were lounging by the pool, and she was sitting there with her phone in one hand and a frozen drink in the other. I leaned over and said, "You know, this place is even better if you look at it with your own eyes instead of through a screen." She laughed it off like she always did. "Come on, babe. Don't be such a grump. People love seeing what we're up to. It's cute." "Yeah, I get it," I said. "But maybe we could just put the phones down for a bit? It's our honeymoon after all." She sighed, rolled her eyes, and put her phone face down on the table. "Fine. Happy now?" she said, in that joking but not really tone. I let it go because I didn't want to argue, but something about her reaction rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't trying to ruin her fun. I just wanted to feel like we were actually together. Then there was this thing with the staff. Rachel was super chatty with everyone who worked at the resort. Like, overly friendly. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those guys who gets jealous every time his wife talks to another guy. But with Rachel, it was different. She wasn't just polite. She was flirty. She'd laugh a little too hard at their jokes, compliment their accents, and ask way more questions than seemed normal. The first time I noticed it, we were at the beach bar. The bartender, this young guy with a thick French accent, was mixing her a cocktail. Rachel leaned over the counter, smiling, and said, "Wow, you're so good at that. Have you been doing this for long?" The guy laughed, clearly enjoying the attention, and started telling her about his background. Rachel hung on every word, nodding and laughing like he was the most fascinating person she'd ever met. I just sat there, sipping my drink, feeling like a third wheel. After we walked away, I said, "You seem to be hitting it off with the bartender." She grinned. "Oh, stop. I was just being friendly. You're not jealous, are you?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "It's just, I don't know. Maybe tone it down a bit?" She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive sometimes. Relax." That became her go-to response anytime I brought something up. Relax. Like I was the one making things weird. It started happening more and more. Whether it was the bartender, the guy at the front desk, or even the snorkeling instructor, Rachel always seemed to find a way to be the center of attention. I told myself it was just her personality. She liked people, and people liked her. But deep down, it bothered me. The turning point came about halfway through the trip. We were having breakfast on the villa deck when Rachel mentioned wanting to do a special photo shoot. "I've been thinking," she said, slicing into her tropical fruit platter. "We should hire a professional photographer while we're here. Someone who can really capture how beautiful this place is. And us, of course." I shrugged. "We've already taken like 1,000 pictures. What's the point?" "The point is," she said, setting down her fork, "these are memories we'll want to look back on forever. Besides, it's not just for us. Everyone keeps commenting on how amazing the trip looks. It'd be nice to have some professional shots to post." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean for Instagram?" "Don't be like that," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not just for Instagram. It's for us, too." I wasn't thrilled about that, but I didn't want to argue. "Fine," I said. "If it makes you happy, go for it." That afternoon, Rachel went down to the resort office to book the session. She came back an hour later, all smiles. "I found the perfect guy," she said. "His name's Marco. He's done shoots for a bunch of influencers who stayed here. He's super talented." "Great," I said, not really paying attention. I figured it was just another one of Rachel's things, something she wanted to do to make the trip feel more special. At the time, I didn't think it was a big deal. This is where it all started falling apart. Right after this first photo shoot we did with Marco, I could see it coming. But what I didn't realize was how far she'd take it. The day everything unraveled started like any other. Rachel mentioned she was heading out for a solo shoot with Marco. "He has this vision for a sunset series," she said, tying up her hair. "It's going to be gorgeous." I didn't think much of it at the time. We'd already done one photo shoot with him earlier in the week, and she wouldn't stop raving about how talented he was. She even joked about hiring him for other trips in the future. Whatever makes her happy, I thought. Besides, I figured this gave me a chance to relax a little, maybe hit the pool. I wasn't exactly dying to sit around watching Rachel pose for hours. She left around late afternoon, and I didn't see her again until after sunset. When she got back, she was in a ridiculously good mood. "Marco is incredible," she said, kicking off her sandals. "You're going to love these shots. They're some of the best photos I've ever taken. Can't wait to see them," I said, not even looking up from my laptop. She didn't offer to show me any, which I thought was weird, but I let it slide. Rachel liked to edit her pictures before sharing them with anyone. It was her thing, part of her whole brand. Later that night, we were having dinner when one of the resort staff approached me. "Excuse me," she said, holding out a small USB drive. "These are the photos from your wife's session with Marco earlier. He asked us to deliver them to you." "Oh, thanks," I said, taking the USB. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just figured Rachel must have asked Marco to send over the raw files. I tucked it into my pocket, planning to check it out later. After dinner, Rachel said she was tired and went straight to bed. I stayed up, scrolling through my phone and sipping on a soda, and eventually remembered the USB. I grabbed my laptop, plugged it in, and started going through the files. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Rachel in a flowy dress, posing on the beach, the sunset behind her. The shots were stunning, no doubt. Marco knew what he was doing, and Rachel looked incredible in every frame. But as I kept scrolling, something caught my eye. A photo that didn't quite fit with the others. It was Rachel, but she wasn't posing. She was sitting on a lounge chair, laughing at something, or someone, just out of frame. The angle was casual, almost candid, like it wasn't meant to be part of the shoot. I frowned, clicking to the next picture, then the next, and the next. Each shot got worse. The laughing turned into leaning. The leaning turned into touching. And then came the photo that made my stomach drop. Rachel, mid-kiss with Marco, his hand on her waist. It wasn't some quick peck either. It was intimate, full-on making out. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This couldn't be real, right? Maybe it was a weird angle, a misunderstanding. But as I scrolled further, the pictures made it clear there was no misunderstanding. There were more shots of them kissing, laughing, and even some where they were clearly undressing. My wife, on our honeymoon, with some random resort photographer. The last few pictures were explicit. The kind of thing I never thought I'd have to see. Rachel, topless in what looked like our villa, with Marco standing behind her, his hands all over her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a slap in the face. She didn't even have the decency to sneak around somewhere private. She was doing this in the same place we were supposed to be building memories as newlyweds. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to wrap my head around it. My brain kept cycling through the same question. Why? How could she do this? What the hell was I supposed to do now? Eventually, I shut the laptop and just sat there in silence. My hands were shaking and I could feel the rage building in my chest. But I didn't want to wake her up. Not yet. I needed time to think, to figure out how to handle this. Blowing up in the middle of the night wasn't going to solve anything. The next morning, Rachel woke up acting like everything was fine. She was her usual chipper self, chatting about breakfast and asking if I wanted to plan a day of snorkeling. I could barely look at her. Every time I did, all I could see were those pictures. She must have noticed something was off because she eventually asked, "Are you okay? You've been really quiet today." "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She didn't push it, which honestly made me angrier. If the roles were reversed, I'd be asking 100 questions, trying to figure out what was wrong. But Rachel? She didn't seem to care. She was too busy texting on her phone, probably planning her next post. That night, after she went to bed, I looked through the photos again. This time, I paid closer attention to the timestamps. The first set of explicit photos wasn't from the shoot she'd done that day. It was from 2 days earlier. That meant this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment lapse in judgment. Rachel had been sneaking around with Marco for days. And the worst part? I had no idea how far it went. Were there more photos I hadn't seen? Did they hook up while I was sleeping? Or when I was off doing something else? My mind was racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept replaying everything in my head. Rachel's weird behavior, the way she laughed a little too hard at Marco's jokes, how she'd been glued to her phone since we got here. All the little red flags I ignored were flashing neon now. I knew I had to confront her. This wasn't something I could ignore. Rachel thought she was untouchable, that she could lie to my face and get away with it. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. Rachel was already up by the time I got out of bed. She was sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone like nothing was wrong. I could feel my blood boiling just looking at her, but I forced myself to stay calm. I walked out and joined her, pretending everything was fine. "Morning," I said, grabbing a cup of coffee for myself. "Good morning," she chirped, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. "I was thinking we could do that couple's paddleboarding thing today. Doesn't that sound fun?" "Yeah, maybe," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "By the way, I got the photos from your shoot yesterday. The resort dropped off a USB last night." Her face froze for just a split second, so quick that if I hadn't been looking for it, I might have missed it, but I saw it. "Oh, really?" she said, recovering almost instantly. "That's great. Marco's work is amazing, isn't it?" "Yeah, it's interesting," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "You didn't mention you were doing, some extra poses." She laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" I set my mug down and looked her dead in the eyes. "Why don't you tell me what you were really doing yesterday? Or better yet, the day before that too." Her smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about." "Cut the crap, Rachel," I said, my voice sharper now. "I saw the photos. All of them." Her face turned pale. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. Then she tried to backpedal. "Wait, what photos? Are you talking about the ones Marco sent? There must be some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake," I snapped, pulling out my phone. I'd copied the photos onto it the night before, just in case. I opened the folder, selected the one of her kissing Marco, and held it up for her to see. "Explain this." Rachel's mouth opened and closed, like she was trying to come up with an excuse, but couldn't find the words. Finally, she said, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? Because it looks like you've been sneaking around with Marco behind my back. On our honeymoon, no less." "I can explain," she said quickly, her voice shaking. It wasn't planned. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, my voice rising. "So what, you just tripped and fell into his arms? Give me a break, Rachel." "I was confused," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "You've been so distant lately. Always working, always distracted. I felt, I don't know, lonely." "Lonely?" I said, practically shouting now. "We're on our honeymoon. How the hell are you lonely when we're spending every single day together?" She started crying then, full-on sobbing, but I wasn't buying it. "I made a mistake," she said through her tears. "I was stupid. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Far?" I said, narrowing my eyes. "So you admit it wasn't just a kiss?" She froze again, and that told me everything I needed to know. "Unbelievable," I said, shaking my head. "You're disgusting. Please, just listen to me," she begged, reaching for my hand. Pulled away. "It didn't mean anything. Marco doesn't mean anything to me." I stood up, glaring down at her. "You know what doesn't mean anything? Your promises, your vows, the whole damn marriage, apparently. Was this your plan all along, Rachel? Marry me for the lifestyle and then screw around with the first guy who gives you attention? That's not fair," she cried. "I love you." "You don't get to say that to me," I said coldly. "Not after what you've done." Her sobbing got louder, but I wasn't moved. I was done. "You know what, Rachel? I don't give a damn about your excuses. You've shown me exactly who you are, and guess what? I want nothing to do with you." She tried to grab my hand, her voice shaking. "Please, just listen to me. We can fix this. We can move past it." I yanked my hand away. "Move past it? Are you insane? There's no coming back from this. You disrespected me, our marriage, and everything we were supposed to be building together. You made your choice, Rachel. Now you're going to live with it." I stood up and walked inside, grabbing my phone to call the resort manager. Rachel followed me, still crying and begging. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Making arrangements," I said coldly. "You're out of here." "What? You can't just kick me out," she cried. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I snapped. "Pack your stuff. You're leaving the villa today." She started to argue, but I ignored her, speaking directly to the manager when he picked up. "I'm calling from Villa 14. My wife will no longer be staying with me. I need you to move her to another room, whatever's available in the main building, and make sure she doesn't have access to the villa again." The manager hesitated for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "Of course, sir. I'll arrange it immediately." Rachel's jaw dropped as I hung up the phone. "You're being ridiculous. You can't just throw me out like this." I turned to her, my voice sharp and unwavering. "Watch me." While she packed her things, I took it a step further. I called my dad. He'd always been my go-to in situations like this. Calm, calculated, and ruthless when necessary. I laid it all out for him, sparing no detail. He didn't interrupt, but I could hear the anger building in his voice as I talked. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. "I knew there was something off about it," he said. "But this is a whole new level of disrespect." "What do you think I should do?" I asked, even though I already had a pretty good idea. You don't leave her a single thing, he said firmly. She's done. Credit cards, access to the company accounts, everything. Gone. Already working on it, I said. And her flight home? Canceled, he said without hesitation. I smirked. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. After hanging up, I got in touch with our financial team to make sure every connection Rachel had to my family's money was severed. The credit cards she loved to flash around? Canceled. The access to any joint accounts? Frozen. Even the cards she used for emergencies? Gone. When the resort staff arrived to escort her out, she made one last attempt to plead with me. Please, she said, tears streaming down her face. Don't do this. I'll do anything to fix this. Just give me another chance. I crossed my arms and stared at her, unflinching. Fix this? The only thing you can do is leave. Maybe Marco can help you figure out your next move. Her face twisted in anger then. The tears replaced with rage. You'll regret this, she hissed. You'll regret treating me like this. I laughed, shaking my head. The only thing I regret is marrying you. Now get out. The staff led her away, and just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. My wife, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, had turned out to be a liar, a cheater, and a complete fraud. But you know what? I didn't feel sad. I felt free. They assured me she was moved to one of the basic rooms in the main building. Nothing fancy, just a bed and a bathroom. The thought of her going from our luxurious villa to a standard room made me laugh. It was fitting, really. She wanted to act like she was too good for me. Let her enjoy being just another guest. By the evening, everything was set. Rachel was cut off from my life financially, emotionally, and physically. I didn't leave any loose ends, but I wasn't done yet. Sure, Rachel was a liar and a cheat, but she didn't pull this off alone. Marco, the slimy resort photographer, had been just as involved. I wasn't about to let him walk away like nothing happened. If he thought he could mess with me and get away with it, he was in for a rude awakening. The morning after I threw Rachel out, I called the resort manager. I figured I'd start with the basics and see if the resort was even aware of what the photographer had been up to. Good morning, the manager said when he picked up. How can I assist you today? I have a problem with one of your employees, I said flatly. Marco, your photographer. There was a long pause before he replied, I see. What seems to be the issue? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. The issue, I said, is that he's been hooking up with my wife behind my back. On your property, during what was supposed to be our honeymoon. The manager sounded shocked. I don't know what to say. This is the first I'm hearing of any such behavior. Yeah, well, I have proof, I said. Pictures, explicit ones, taken during one of their so-called photo shoots. Do you want me to send them to you, or should I go straight to the resort's corporate office? There was another pause, this one longer. That won't be necessary, he said quickly. Please allow us to handle this matter internally. I assure you, we take these kinds of allegations very seriously. Good, I said, because I'm not letting this slide. By the end of the day, the manager had called me back to let me know Marco was being terminated immediately. He will no longer be associated with the resort in any capacity, the manager said, his tone crisp and professional. And we sincerely apologize for the distress this has caused you. Good to hear, I replied. I trust you'll also be ensuring this doesn't happen again with any future guests? Absolutely, he said. This was an egregious violation of our policies, and we are taking steps to ensure it never happens again. It felt like a win, but I wasn't done with Marco yet. Getting him fired was just the first step. This guy had crossed a line, and I wanted to make sure he couldn't pull the same stunt on someone else. That's when I started digging. With the help of a friend back in Miami, I tracked down Marco's Instagram and other social media accounts. It didn't take long to figure out that Rachel wasn't his first special client. His accounts were full of tagged photos from previous guests, mostly women, all gushing about how amazing she was. I even found a few posts that seemed overly familiar. The captions were innocent enough, but the body language in the photos, let's just say it didn't look professional. I decided to reach out to a few of these women, just to see if there was a pattern. Most of them didn't respond, but one did. Her name was Lisa, and she had stayed at the resort a few months before me. When I told her what had happened with Rachel, she wasn't surprised. That guy's a creep, she said. He kept flirting with me during our shoot, and at one point, he even suggested we do some boudoir-style photos. I shut it down immediately, but it was super uncomfortable. Lisa's story gave me exactly what I needed to take things further. I sent her screenshots of Marco's social media posts and asked if she'd be willing to share her experience with the resort's corporate office. She agreed, and within a few days, we had a small but damning collection of testimonies from other women Marco had worked with. I forwarded everything to the resort's corporate headquarters, along with a formal complaint detailing my experience. It didn't take long for them to respond. The head of guest relations called me personally, apologizing profusely and assuring me they were conducting a full investigation. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted Marco to feel the consequences of his actions outside the resort too. Using the same evidence I'd gathered, I reached out to a few travel review sites and forums where people talked about their experiences with high-end resorts. I didn't name the resort itself. I didn't want to ruin their reputation, but I made sure Marco's name was out there. The story gained traction quickly. People started sharing it on social media, and before long, Marco's personal accounts were flooded with comments calling him out. It wasn't just about me anymore. It turned out I wasn't the only one who had been affected by his sleazy behavior. Other women started coming forward, sharing their own stories of how he had crossed the line during photo shoots. By the end of the week, Marco had deleted all of his social media accounts. His reputation in the travel photography world was ruined, and as far as I could tell, he was done professionally. Good riddance. Meanwhile, Rachel tried to act like none of this was her fault. She texted me a few days after Marco got fired saying, "I can't believe you got him fired. That's so extreme." I didn't bother replying. She still didn't get it. She thought she could cheat on me, humiliate me, and walk away without any consequences. But that wasn't how this was going to go. Not for her, and definitely not for Marco. I thought I'd be done with her drama. I'd made it clear that we were over, that there was no coming back from what she'd done. But Rachel wasn't ready to let go. Over the next few days, she kept trying to get to me. Texts, voicemails, showing up at the villa unannounced. It was a constant barrage of excuses, apologies, and attempts to twist the situation in her favor. The first time she showed up, it was early evening, just after I'd returned from a swim. I was sitting on the villa deck, enjoying the peace and quiet, when I heard her yelling from outside the gate. "You can't ignore me forever!" she screamed. "We need to talk." I stood up, walked over to the gate, and stared at her through the bars. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smudged, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Go back to your room, Rachel," I said coldly. "There's nothing to talk about." "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I love you, okay?" I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "You don't love me. You love what I can give you." "That's not true," she snapped, her face twisting with anger. "I married you because I love you. You're the one who's throwing everything away." "I'm throwing everything away?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Rachel, you're the one who destroyed this marriage, not me. And now you're dealing with the consequences." She started crying again, her voice desperate. "Please, just let me come back to the villa. We can talk about this. We can figure it out." "No," I said firmly. "You're done here. And if you don't leave now, I'll call security to escort you back to your room." She glared at me, her tears suddenly gone. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "You can't just throw me away like trash." I didn't bother responding. I turned around, walked back inside, and closed the door behind me. That was the last time I spoke to her in Bora Bora. When it was time to leave, I booked myself an earlier flight back to Miami. Rachel, of course, was still trying to reach me, but I ignored every text and call. I wanted nothing to do with her. But while I was focused on getting away from her, Rachel was busy flipping the story. By the time I landed in Miami, I'd started hearing whispers from mutual friends. Rachel was telling everyone that I was the one who ruined the honeymoon. According to her, I was controlling, distant, and even emotionally abusive. She painted herself as the victim, saying I'd abandoned her in Bora Bora and cut her off without warning. Her biggest move was going to her parents. Of course she wanted someone to pay for her flight home. They were wealthy enough to help her, but nowhere near the level of my family. Rachel had told them some sob story about how I'd mistreated her and then left her stranded overseas. Of course they believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was their golden child. But Rachel underestimated one thing. I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The first thing I did when I got back to Miami was meet with my lawyer, James. I gave him every piece of evidence I had. The photos, the texts, the voicemails. He started drafting the divorce papers immediately, making sure Rachel wouldn't get a single cent. Next, I decided to deal with her parents. Rachel thought she could use them as her safety net, but she didn't realize how quickly I could pull the rug out from under her. I called her father directly and asked to meet in person. He sounded wary, but agreed. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat as I sat down across from him. "I'm not sure what this is about," he said, his tone defensive. "It's about your daughter," I said, pulling out my phone. "She's been lying to you." Before he could say anything, I showed him the photos. His face turned pale as he scrolled through the images of Rachel with Marco. This can't be real," he stammered. "Oh, it's real," I said flatly. "She cheated on me during our honeymoon, and then lied to you about what happened. She's been trying to spin this whole thing as my fault, but as you can see, that's not the case." He didn't say much after that, just sat there, staring at the table, clearly impressed. I didn't care. I wasn't there to spare anyone's feelings. I was there to set the record straight. As expected, word spread quickly. Rachel's parents weren't exactly thrilled to find out their daughter had been lying to them, and they started pulling back their financial support. Her friends, who had been eating up her victim act, began distancing themselves too. Nobody likes being caught on the wrong side of a lie. Rachel, of course, wasn't going down without a fight. She showed up at my lawyer's office the day after she was served the divorce papers, demanding to speak to me. I wasn't there, but James filled me in later. She thinks she's entitled to half of everything, he said, smirking. She doesn't realize how airtight your family's setup is. That was the beauty of it. Every major asset, our home, the cars, even the accounts she thought were ours, was under my parents' name. Rachel had no legal claim to any of it, and with the evidence of her infidelity, even her argument for spousal support was dead in the water. When Rachel finally realized this, she was livid. She called me, screaming into the phone about how unfair it was. "You're such a coward," she yelled. "You had everything in your parents' name so I wouldn't get anything. That's disgusting." "No, Rachel," I said calmly. "What's disgusting is cheating on your husband and then playing the victim. You wanted independence, remember? Well, now you've got it. Enjoy." She tried to argue, but I hung up. I didn't need to hear anything else. Rachel was officially defeated, and there was nothing she could do about it. The divorce was finalized within a few months. Rachel walked away with nothing. No money, no assets, not even sympathy from the people she thought would support her. Meanwhile, I moved on with my life, focusing on my work and my family. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled it. Rachel made her choices, and she paid the price. As for me, I came out stronger, smarter, and with a clearer picture of what I truly deserve. This story is titled, "Stepdaughter said that I'm not her real mom and shouldn't tell her what to do. You're nothing to me. You're a nobody." So when it came time to pay for college, I told her to let her real mother pay for her tuition. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey, Reddit. So here's my story. I don't know why I stayed so long or why I let things get so bad, but looking back now, it feels like I was blind to all the red flags. My name's Lauren. I'm 46, and I own a bakery in Philadelphia. It's my pride and joy, something I built up from scratch with a lot of sweat and long nights. It's small, but successful, and I've always worked hard to make it a welcoming spot for the neighborhood. About 7 years ago, I met Greg. He was this contractor I hired to renovate the bakery when I was trying to expand. Right from the start, he had this way of making you feel like you could trust him. He wasn't bad looking either. Tall, dark hair, nice smile. He'd always take the time to chat with me when he was on a break, telling me about his life. He had this way of making it sound like he'd been through a lot, but was working hard to overcome it, you know? He talked about his daughter, Chloe, who was 11 at the time. He said she was his whole world, and that he'd been raising her on his own after his ex-wife, Nina, lost custody. According to him, Nina was irresponsible and caused a lot of chaos in their lives. So Greg had stepped up as the solid parent. He made it sound like he was some kind of superhero dad. And honestly, I ate it up. I thought, wow, what a good guy, taking care of his kid like that. Within a year, we were talking about marriage. Greg had this way of making everything sound like we were building a life together. He'd say things like, "Chloe and I would love to have a real family again." And I guess I let myself believe that I could give them that. It wasn't just about Greg. It was Chloe too. She was shy at first, but sweet in her own way. I wanted to give her a stable, happy home, something I didn't really have growing up. So, we got married. Greg and Chloe moved into my house, which was bigger and closer to better schools for her. At first, it was great. We did family dinners, game nights, and weekend outings. Chloe seemed to be warming up to me. And Greg, well, he seemed perfect. He'd help around the house, tell me how much he appreciated me, and remind me that we were building a future together. But looking back, the cracks started showing pretty early on. 4 years after we got married, Greg told me he was leaving his contracting job. He said the management was toxic and that he couldn't stand the way they treated him. I was sympathetic at first. I mean, everyone deserves to work somewhere they feel respected, right? He said he just needed a little time to figure out his next step, and I didn't question it. Chloe, on the other hand, seemed to be adjusting well to her new school and neighborhood. She was making friends, joining clubs, and even started talking about college plans. One day, she came home from school and said she needed a $200 calculator for some advanced math class. I told her I'd look into it, but before I could even finish the sentence, she snapped, "What's there to look into? I need it." Greg, who was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone, chimed in with, "Just get it for her, Lauren. It's for school." Like, excuse me? I'm already paying for everything, and you're just going to sit there and tell me what to do with my money? I should have said something then. I should have set boundaries, but I didn't. I wanted to keep the peace. I told myself, this is what families do. You support each other. So I bought the damn calculator and pretended it didn't bother me. But deep down, I was starting to feel like I was being taken advantage of. The thing that really got to me was how Greg talked about our future while doing absolutely nothing to contribute to it. He'd sit there with his coffee, telling me about these grand plans to start his own business. Once I get it up and running, Lauren, you'll see. I'll make sure you don't have to work so hard anymore. It sounded great in theory, but there was zero follow-through. He didn't even have a business plan. It was all talk. Okay, at first, I tried to be understanding of Greg quitting his job. Everyone hits rough patches, right? But I wasn't expecting his rough patch to turn into a full-on freeloading lifestyle. But weeks turned into months, and the man did absolutely nothing. I'd come home from 12-hour days at the bakery to find him sprawled out on the couch, eating chips and watching reruns of old cop shows. He didn't even bother to change out of his sweats most days. Meanwhile, the groceries he promised to pick up tomorrow were still not bought. The sink was full of dishes, and the trash was overflowing. Hey, Greg, I'd ask, trying not to sound too annoyed. Did you send out any job applications today? Not yet, he'd say, eyes glued to the TV. I'm still working on my portfolio. You know, for the freelance gigs I'm planning? Oh, the freelance gigs. Let me tell you about those. Apparently, Greg's big plan was to start some kind of home renovation consulting business. He talked a lot about pivoting his skills and being his own boss. Sounds impressive, right? Except he never actually took any steps toward making it happen. No website, no business cards, no marketing, nothing. One time, I even offered to help him set up an Instagram account to showcase his work. I thought maybe if he had a platform, he could attract clients. But he just shrugged and said, I'll get to it later. Social media is not my thing. Like, dude, it's 2023. If you're trying to start a business, you need some kind of online presence. While Greg was busy planning his imaginary empire, I was footing the bill for literally everything. Mortgage, Mr. Utilities, Mr. Groceries, you guessed it, me. Chloe's school expenses, oh yeah, also me. And let's not forget Greg's little hobbies. He started getting into woodworking as a stress reliever, which meant I was buying him expensive tools and supplies that sat untouched in the garage. One day, I came home from the bakery and found a $400 saw sitting in the living room. What's this? I asked, holding up the receipt. Oh, that's for my new project, Greg said, not even looking up from his laptop. I'm going to build a custom coffee table for the living room. Greg, we already have a coffee table, I pointed out. Yeah, but it's not personal, you know? I want something that represents us. The coffee table never got built. The saw stayed in the box for weeks, until I eventually shoved it into the garage to get it out of sight. Meanwhile, Chloe was catching on to her dad's vibe and started acting like the world owed her too. Every time she wanted something, she'd just assume I'd buy it for her. She didn't even bother asking Greg because, let's be real, he was just as broke as she was. Lauren, she said one evening, sliding her laptop across the table toward me, I need this jacket for school. It's for the senior trip. The jacket was $250. A jacket for one trip. Chloe, that's really expensive, I said. Can't we find something similar that's a little cheaper? She rolled her eyes so hard, I thought they might fall out of her head. It's mandatory, she said, like I was being unreasonable. Everyone else is getting it. Before I could say anything, Greg chimed in from the couch. Just get it for her, Lauren. It's not that big of a deal. Like an idiot, I caved. I swiped my card, told myself it wasn't worth the argument, and tried to move on. But it didn't stop there. Oh no. Chloe started treating me like her personal ATM. Need money for a field trip? Ask Lauren. Want the newest iPhone? Lauren will pay for it. She didn't even say thank you most of the time. It was just expected. One day, I overheard her talking to one of her friends on the phone. Yeah, my stepmom's loaded, she said, laughing. She doesn't even care how much stuff costs. I just stood there, stunned. Is that what she thought? That I didn't care? That I was just some endless source of money? Greg wasn't any better. He started making these little comments that rubbed me the wrong way. Like, if I ever complained about how busy I was at the bakery, he'd say, well, at least you're making good money. Or if I brought up the bills, he'd go, you're doing fine, Lauren. Why stress about it? Why stress? Because I was paying for 3 people on one income, Greg. That's why. One night, after a particularly long day, I decided to sit Greg down for a serious talk. Listen, I said, I'm happy to help while you're figuring things out, but this can't go on forever. You need to start contributing, Greg. We're supposed to be a team. He looked at me like I just told him to walk the mark. I am contributing, he said. I help around the house, don't I? I take care of Chloe. Greg, I said, trying to keep my cool. Helping around the house isn't the same as paying bills, and Chloe's almost 18. She doesn't need a babysitter. He sighed like he was the one being inconvenient. Lauren, I just need more time. You've got the bakery. It's not like we're struggling. That was the moment I realized Greg didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a provider, someone who would keep everything running while he coasted through life. I decided to give him one last chance. Okay, I said, but you need to have a concrete plan by the end of the month. No more excuses. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't taking me seriously. And surprised, the end of the month came and went with no plan, no job, and no change. I started feeling trapped, like I was carrying the weight of the entire household on my back while Greg and Chloe just sat there, taking advantage of me. I loved my bakery, but it felt like all the joy was being sucked out of my life because I was working so hard to support two people who didn't appreciate me. When I look back, I should have put my foot down sooner. But at the time, I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that Greg would snap out of it, that Chloe would grow up and start acting responsibly. I wanted so badly for us to be a happy family that I ignored all the signs that it wasn't working. But things were about to get a whole lot worse. By the time Chloe's 18th birthday rolled around, I was so desperate to keep the peace in our house that I didn't even realize how much I was bending over backwards for people who didn't give a damn about me. Chloe had been dropping hints for months about how her birthday needed to be epic because it was a big one. You know, turning 18 and all, she wanted it to be the kind of party her friends would talk about for weeks. Lauren, can we have the party at the bakery? She asked one evening while scrolling on her phone. It's like super cool, and my friends are always saying how classy it is. Classy? Sure, but classy doesn't come cheap. I hesitated for a moment, knowing full well this would cost me more than I was comfortable spending. Before I could even answer, Greg chimed in, "Come on, Lauren, it's her big day. Let's make it special." This man, who still hadn't lifted a finger to contribute financially, was pushing me to throw an extravagant party, but like a sucker, I agreed. I told myself it was for Chloe, not Greg, and that maybe this would help us bond more. Big mistake. I went all out for the party. I closed the bakery for the evening, hired a local band to play live music, and ordered these gorgeous custom cupcakes with edible gold accents. I even let Chloe pick out the decorations, which included some ridiculous balloon arch that cost nearly $500. But hey, I wanted her to feel special. In the days leading up to the party, Chloe was buzzing with excitement. She kept talking about how her friends were going to love it and how it was going to be the best night ever. I asked her for a guest list so I could plan accordingly, but she kept brushing me off. "Don't worry about it, Lauren," she'd say. "It's just a small group of friends." I should have known better. The night of the party, I showed up early to make sure everything was perfect. The bakery looked stunning, and I was actually kind of proud of what I'd pulled off. Chloe arrived about an hour later, dressed to the nines in a designer dress I had bought her. She looked amazing, and I could tell she felt like a queen. Her friends started trickling in, and soon the place was packed. Not just with her classmates, but also with random people I'd never even heard of. It was chaos. Kids were running around, snapping selfies, and blasting music louder than I was comfortable with. But Chloe looked happy, and I figured that was the point. Then, just as I was starting to relax, she walked in. Nina, Chloe's mom. I knew it was her the second I saw her. She had this air of entitlement, like she owned the place. She was wearing this gaudy outfit that didn't match the vibe of the party at all, and her lipstick was smeared like she hadn't checked a mirror all night. She walked right up to Chloe, arms wide open, and yelled, "There's my baby girl!" Chloe froze for a second, glancing nervously at me, but then she hugged her mom like nothing was wrong. "Mom, you made it," she said, smiling. Made it? I hadn't invited her. I didn't even know Chloe had invited her. But there she was, acting like she belonged. I tried to keep my cool, but my heart was racing. I walked over to Greg, who was standing in the corner sipping a soda like he was a guest at someone else's party. "Greg," I said quietly, "did you know Nina was coming?" He looked at me like I just asked him if the sky was blue. "Of course I did," he said. "Chloe told me she wanted her mom here. I didn't think it'd be a big deal." Not a big deal? The woman hadn't shown up sober to a single event in years, and now she was at my bakery, crashing a party I paid for? I was furious, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Not yet. I tried to avoid Nina, but she made that impossible. She was everywhere, hugging Chloe, chatting with her friends, and loudly telling stories about how she used to throw parties just like this when Chloe was a kid. It was infuriating. Then, as if she hadn't already made her presence loud enough, She walked up to my table where I was sitting with Greg and Chloe and said, "This is my spot. Move." I stared at her, trying to process what she just said. "Excuse me?" I replied. "This is my daughter's party," she snapped. "I'm her mother. I should be sitting next to her, not you." I looked at Greg, hoping he'd step in, but as usual, he just stared at his drink like it was the most interesting thing in the world. Chloe, who was sitting next to us, didn't say a word either. She just looked down at her phone, pretending not to notice. "I'm not moving," I said firmly. "There are plenty of empty seats. Feel free to pick one." Nina's face turned red. "Oh, look at you," she sneered. "The big bad stepmom who thinks she can replace me. Guess what? Money can't buy love." Before I could respond, she grabbed a plate of food off the table and hurled it onto the floor. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the room, and everyone stopped talking. It was dead silent. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You're not welcome here." Nina laughed like I told a joke. "Oh, you think you can kick me out? You're nothing more. Nothing." I signaled to the bakery security staff. Yes, I had security, because I wasn't stupid enough to think a party full of teenagers wouldn't need supervision. They escorted Nina out while she screamed and caused a scene in front of all the guests. Chloe looked mortified. And Greg? He still didn't say a damn word. After Nina was gone, the party felt tense. Chloe tried to play it off, but you could tell her friends were uncomfortable. The whispers started. "Did you see her mom? I can't believe that just happened." People left early, and Chloe barely spoke to me for the rest of the night. When we got home, I tried to talk to her. "Chloe, I'm sorry about what happened tonight, but..." She cut me off. "This wouldn't have happened if you just let her sit with us. You made it worse." Couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything I'd done to make her birthday special, she was blaming me for her mom's behavior? I looked at Greg, hoping for backup, but he just muttered, "Let's talk about this tomorrow." After the disaster that was Chloe's birthday, you'd think Greg might have stepped up and at least tried to show some appreciation or support. Nope. Instead, he doubled down on being the most entitled, lazy, and delusional person I've ever met. By this point, I wasn't even angry. I was just exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, financially, exhausted. Things hit a new low when Greg decided he was going to help out by taking over some of the household chores. At first, I thought, finally, he's doing something. But of course, it didn't last. For about a week, he'd occasionally do the dishes or vacuum the living room, but then he started complaining about how draining it was. "This is a lot of work," he said one evening, as he tossed a load of laundry onto the couch. "I don't know how you expect me to do all this and focus on my business." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Greg, I've been doing all of this and running a business for years. What are you talking about?" He shrugged. "Yeah, but you're used to it. This is new for me." I couldn't even respond. What was there to say? The man was allergic to responsibility. And then there was Chloe. If Greg was a freeloading mooch, Chloe was quickly becoming his protege. She'd picked up on his attitude and ran with it. She wasn't just asking for things anymore, she was demanding them. One evening, she came downstairs and announced that she needed new furniture for her room. Not just a desk or a chair, she wanted a full makeover. New bed, new dresser, new everything. "I've outgrown all my old stuff," she said, flipping her hair like she was a Kardashian. "I need something more mature." "Chloe, we can't afford that right now," I said firmly. "Maybe we can look at updating a few things next week." Her face turned red. "You just don't want to spend money on me because I'm not your kid." That hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been doing my best for this girl, and she had the nerve to say I didn't care about her because she wasn't my biological daughter. I didn't even know how to respond. Greg, of course, didn't say a word. He just sat there, staring at his phone like nothing was happening. That night, I sat down with Greg and laid it all out. "You need to get a job," I said bluntly. "I don't care what it is, but you can't just sit here and expect me to do everything. It's not fair." Greg didn't take it well. "You're being selfish," he said, crossing his arms. "You don't understand how hard it is for me right now." I laughed, an actual laugh, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Hard for you. Greg, I'm the one working 12-hour days while you sit on your ass. How is that fair?" He just shook his head. "You don't get it, Lauren. You've always been about the money. You don't care about my dreams." That was it. That was the moment I realized Greg didn't see me as a person. He saw me as a bank account. Greg's true colors were in full view, and I knew things weren't going to get better. But little did I know, Chloe was about to up the stakes and push me to my breaking point. Chloe's graduation was the grand finale. By this point, I was so worn down by Greg and Chloe's entitlement that I could barely muster the energy to argue anymore. I'd become the human version of sure whatever, just going along with things to avoid yet another blow-up. But let me tell you, this one took the cake. It started a couple of weeks before Chloe's graduation ceremony. She came home one day, full of excitement, waving a letter from her school. "They're giving me an award at graduation," she announced, practically skipping into the kitchen. "That's great, Chloe," I said, genuinely happy for her. "What's the award for? Something about leadership or community service?" "I don't know," she shrugged, already texting someone on her phone. "But the important thing is, I get to go on stage." I smiled and congratulated her, even though it bugged me a little that she didn't even know what the award was for. Still, I figured this was a proud moment for her, and I wanted to support her. What I didn't realize was how quickly things were about to spiral out of control. The first sign of trouble came when Chloe announced that she wanted to have a big graduation party at the house. "We'll keep it simple," she said, which I now know is Chloe speak for start prepping your wallet. When I asked her how many people she wanted to invite, she casually said, "Oh, like 50, maybe 60. "Chloe, 60 people?" I said, my eyes practically popping out of my head. "Where are we even going to fit that many people?" "We'll do it in the backyard," she replied, like it was no big deal. "Just rent some tables and chairs, and maybe a tent. It'll be fine." Fine? I was still recovering from the disaster of her birthday party, and now she wanted me to host an even bigger event? I glanced at Greg, hoping he'd step in and suggest something more reasonable. Of course, he didn't. "She's only graduating once," he said with a shrug. "We should make it special." I gritted my teeth but agreed to the party. As the graduation ceremony got closer, Chloe's demands started piling up. She needed a new dress for the event. "Nothing cheap, Lauren? This is a big deal." New shoes to match the dress, professional hair and makeup, and of course, a custom cake for the party. By the time I finished paying for everything, I was out hundreds of dollars. Not once did Greg or Chloe even offer to chip in. On the morning of the ceremony, Chloe came downstairs wearing her brand new dress, looking like $1,000,000. She glanced at me and said, "Don't forget to bring flowers for after the ceremony. It'll look weird if I don't get any." It'll look weird? Not, "Hey Lauren, could you please bring flowers?" No, it was just expected that I'd show up with a bouquet like some personal assistant. I bit my tongue, grabbed my keys, and ran out to pick up flowers before we headed to the school. By the time we got there, I was already exhausted, but I plastered on a smile and tried to focus on Chloe's big moment. The ceremony itself was fine. Chloe got her award, walked across the stage, and beamed at the applause. For a split second, I thought, okay, maybe this will be worth it. Maybe she'll realize how much I care and start treating me better. After the ceremony, we met her outside to take pictures. Greg handed her the bouquet I'd bought, taking all the credit, of course. "Your stepmom picked these up," he said, like it was some minor afterthought. Chloe barely glanced at me. "Oh, thanks, I guess." Thanks, I guess? I'd been running myself ragged to make this day perfect for her, and all I got was a half-hearted thanks? I swallowed my frustration and smiled for the pictures, but inside I was fuming. The real drama started at the graduation party. I'd spent all day setting up the backyard, arranging tables, hanging decorations, and making sure the food was perfect. By the time the guests started arriving, I was running on fumes. Chloe, on the other hand, was in full party mode, laughing with her friends and posing for pictures like a celebrity. Greg, as usual, was nowhere to be found, probably hiding inside, scrolling on his phone. About an hour into the party, Chloe came up to me and said, "Mom's coming over." I froze. "What do you mean, Mom's coming over?" "She wants to congratulate me," Chloe said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I told her to stop by. "Chloe," I said, trying to stay calm, "after what happened at your birthday, I don't think it's a good idea for Nina to come here." Chloe rolled her eyes. "That was your fault, Lauren. If you hadn't been so rude to her, none of that would have happened." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Chloe, she caused a scene, insulted me, and destroyed property. How is that my fault?" "You just don't get it," Chloe snapped. "She's my real mom, and she's part of my life whether you